This video focuses on principles for analyzing an audience before you write. Understanding and applying these principles determines your success as a writer in the workplace more than anything else. That's why I've created 2 separate videos on audience analysis. This is called the rhetorical triangle. It's a simple way to visualize the context of any message. The 3 corners of the triangle represent the 3 major factors for consideration when analyzing an audience. The arrow here shows that one side of the triangle connects the audience with the message itself. That's my focus in this video. I'm going to use examples from a Policies and Procedures manual to put these principles into action. The specific document is titled Integrated Cultural Resources Management Plan for Installations of the Texas Army National Guard. Government entities publish Cultural Resources Management Plans, or CRMP for short, for several reasons. That includes ensuring the responsible management and protection of resources, complying with legal and regulatory requirements, and also promoting public involvement and education. The target audience for a CRMP typically includes a wide variety of stakeholders. It might be government agencies, private developers, archaeologists, historians, tribal representatives, the general public. We'll look at the specifics of the message in a few minutes. First, let's dig into the concept of audience readiness to accept this message. Management research tells us that different individuals who receive the same message are not equally receptive to or ready to accept it. A reader's readiness is described by 2 traits: their expertise and their sensitivity. That means one meaningful way to describe different readers is to separate them into those who are ready and those who are not. Experts on the information are able to accept a message, whereas those without expertise are unable. For example, the more you know about U.S. income tax rules, the more able you are to accept what an accountant tells you when explaining a change. Note that your expertise in other domains is irrelevant. It's your tax expertise that matters within the context of that message. The second trait that determines readiness is sensitivity. That means the other meaningful way to describe different readers is to separate them into those who are sensitive and those who are not. Sensitive readers are unwilling, whereas non-sensitive ones are willing. These concepts will be the focus of our audience analysis in the CRMP passage I showed you earlier. So what can we say about audience readiness to accept this message? If you didn't read it earlier, pause now, take a second. To remind you, the audience includes a variety of stakeholders. That could be government agency employees, private developers, archaeologists, historians, the general public, and more. The specific audience addressed in this passage targets general and trade contractors. So how much did they know about the message here, about the content of the message? There's certainly some assumed knowledge about what materials count in the policy. So how much do they need to know? In order to be ready, contractors reading this policy need to know what materials, features, or systems are covered. That means the writer must define or describe them in order to give readers what they need to accept the policy message. On the other hand, writers don't need to describe how a panel of experts determined what counts in order to help their audience have the needed expertise for this message. You'll learn more about the implications of audience analysis for developing information in another video lesson. I want to make clear that nearly everyone learns to write in school. Students learn to write for a single audience. Teachers. This is unfortunate because teachers know more about the content of the student's message than the student writers themselves. That means that students write to demonstrate what they know or what they think to an expert. That situation rarely, if ever, occurs in the workplace. Instead, workplace writers sometimes address an audience with a similar level of knowledge, like when one accountant writes to another about a tax rule, but most of the time workplace writers address a less knowledgeable audience. After all, part of the role of an expert is to use the knowledge they have to solve problems for those who don't have that knowledge. That means the most important writing you do will not be to demonstrate what you know. It'll be to communicate what you know to an audience with some inability to accept your messages. This is a good time to mention the curse of knowledge, which undermines the success of experts when communicating with non-experts. As an example, when Apple released the first iPhone in 2007, it didn't support third-party applications and instead only came preloaded with Apple's own built-in apps. Tech-savvy users were bewildered and complained mightily that basic apps like web browsers or media players were missing. However, Apple's developers knew their longer-term vision was to launch the App Store later that year. Their inside knowledge led them to believe users would understand the capabilities that were planned but not yet available. But to the average customer with no exposure to this insider roadmap or knowledge, the lack of common apps was confusing and not clearly communicated. After facing backlash, Apple's leadership acknowledged they had fallen victim to the curse of knowledge. They failed to empathize with regular consumer expectations. Apple then clarified in advertising that the App Store was on its way soon, and that helped resolve some of the miscommunication caused by their own expertise, which blinded them to how the iPhone was perceived by general users at launch time. This example demonstrates how even experts can misjudge how to clearly explain when overly focused on their own knowledge bubble. Failing to view things from the user's perspective led to Apple's early messaging misfire around the original iPhone launch. So, what's the primary message in this passage from the CRMP? I'd say it's something like what I've shown in the black box here. Stop work and report discovery if you find materials, etc., etc. We have to identify that primary message in order to take care of the second aspect of audience readiness. In order to determine readiness, we need to consider audience sensitivity in addition to their knowledge. We'll return to this passage in just a minute. In my experience, traditional students who often have little white-collar workplace experience are likely to struggle with the concept of sensitivity. Again, much of the trouble can be traced to the fact that students write for teachers, whose job entails the willingness to read the students' messages. A teacher must be willing to read whatever a student writes. Clearly, this is not the case for workplace readers. They can and do quite easily ignore messages. Let me lead you through some simple examples to help you grasp levels of sensitivity. If someone reads, "You won the lottery," we can predict a highly positive reaction. They gained something valuable. On the other hand, if they read, "Your savings were stolen," we can predict a negative one. They lost something highly valuable. If they read that tax rules changed, we can predict not much reaction at all, a kind of neutral message. Of course, that depends on the specific reader. If the reader has been hoping for the changes, the reaction's more positive. But if the reader thinks the changes will increase his or her own tax bill, the reaction is probably more negative. The sensitivity is based on how much the reader is personally affected by the message. If someone reads that a person won a free meal, they're likely to react positively, but not as much as if they had won the meal themselves. In a nutshell, in Western cultures like the U.S., the majority of professionals are highly sensitive only to messages which are extremely negative. That means the message must represent a personal loss of great value that's rare or unique. The primary message, we said, in this passage from the CRMP is directive. Stop work. All directives have some level of sensitivity. What we need to do is determine how personal and rare it is for the CRMP readers to be directed to stop work. Although the message could affect them personally, a written policy is by its nature not personal. The uniqueness of the work stoppage might depend on each individual contractor's type and length of experience. Certainly it's undesirable to be told to stop work, but it must be fairly commonplace to contractors, especially if they work for government entities. It's certainly challenging for writers to address an audience with different levels of readiness. That includes knowledge or sensitivity. Let's summarize how an analysis of audience readiness would help a writer plan to write this CRMP. So, if our contractors lack expertise and are sensitive to the CRMP policy on stopping work, they would be classified as the least ready. The audience who is both unable and unwilling to accept a message is the most difficult to address. If our contractors have sufficient expertise and are not sensitive to the CRMP policy on stopping work, they would be classified as the most ready. This type of audience is the easiest to address. Of course, contractors might be unable but willing, or they might be able but not willing. I cannot easily construct a context in which the work stoppage policy message is a highly negative one for the intended audience. On the other hand, I suspect the level of expertise might vary enough to make some of the readers less able to accept the message than others. In this video, I introduce two aspects of audience readiness to accept a message: expertise and sensitivity. If you find all of this complex, I can only say that understanding your audience is not a simple or straightforward task. Writers need to assess what their readers know and need to know. This is the only way for writers, especially experts, to overcome the curse of knowledge. Writers also need to assess how sensitive readers may be about the message. In Northern European and Anglo cultures, only the most highly personal and rare negative messages are classified as truly sensitive. Audience readiness has implications for how the message is developed, organized, and worded. We'll get to those topics after we finish with the principles needed to begin writing.